Biden forgives millions of scholar loans. Critics fear inflation. Washington President Joe Biden mentioned on Wednesday the U.S. government will forgive $10,000 in student loans for hundreds of thousands of debt-saddled former university college students, maintaining a pledge he made in the 2020 campaign for the White House. The circulate ought to boost help for his fellow Democrats within the November congressional elections. However, some economists mentioned it can gas inflation, and a few Republicans inside the U.S. Congress wondered whether the president had the legal authority to cancel the debt. Debt forgiveness will loose up loads of billions of dollars for brand new purchaser spending that would be aimed at homebuying and other big-ticket expenses, in step with economists who said this would upload a brand new wrinkle to the United States' inflation combat. The moves are, for households that want them, the maximum working and center elegance people hit mainly difficult all through the pandemic, Biden mentioned throughout comments on the White House. He pledged no high-income families could advantage, addressing a central criticism of the plan. I will by no means make an apology for helping working Americans and center elegance, specifically no longer to the identical folks who voted for a $2 trillion tax cut that mainly benefited the wealthiest Americans and the most important organizations, Biden stated, referring to a Republican tax cut passed underneath former President Donald Trump. Borrower balances had been frozen because the beginning of the COVID-19 outbreak, with no bills required on most federal student loans on account that March 2020. Many Democrats had driven for Biden to forgive as an awful lot as $50,000 in keeping with borrower. Republicans mainly adverse student mortgage forgiveness, calling it unfair as it will disproportionately assist human beings' incomes higher incomes. President Biden's student loan socialism is a slap in the face to every own family who sacrificed to shop for college, every graduate who paid their debt, and each American who selected a sure career path or volunteered to serve in our armed forces in order to keep away from taking up debt, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell stated Wednesday. The management has but to decide the charge tag for the package, with a purpose to rely upon how many human beings follow for it, White House Domestic Policy Advisor Susan Rice informed reporters. Student loans obtained after June 30 this year are not eligible, she mentioned. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre told journalists the management has felony authority to forgive the debt under a law allowing such action for the duration of a countrywide emergency such as a plague. Earlier, Republican U.S. Representative Elise Stefanik had referred to as the plan reckless and unlawful. American university lessons costs are extensively better than in most different rich nations, and U.S. purchasers convey $1.75 trillion in pupil loan debt, most of it held with the aid of the federal government. Biden stated different countries could pass America economically if college students aren't presented financial alleviation. Pandemic pause. Pell Grants. The administration will increase a COVID-19 pandemic-linked pause on student loan repayment to year cease, whilst forgiving $10,000 in student debt for single debtors with annual earnings underneath $125,000 at 12 months or married couples who earn much less than $250,000, the White House said. Some 8 million debtors could be affected mechanically, the Department of Education stated, others need to use for forgiveness. The authorities is also forgiving as much as $20,000 in debt for some 6 million college students from low-income families who acquired federal Pell Grants, and offering a brand new rule that protects a few earnings from compensation plans and forgives some mortgage balances after 10 years of repayment, the Education Department mentioned. A New York Federal Reserve observe indicates that slicing $10,000 in federal debt for every pupil could quantity to $321 billion and get rid of the entire stability for 11.8 million debtors, or 31% of them. Inflation impact. A senior Biden management official instructed journalists the plan ought to gain as much as 43 million student debtors, completely canceling the debt for a few 20 million. After December 31, the government will resume requiring payment on last scholar loans that were paused for the duration of the pandemic. The official mentioned this will offset any inflationary results of the forgiveness. Payment resumptions ought to actually have a dampening impact on prices, the professional said. Former U.S. Treasury Secretary Larry Summers disagreed.